A little while ago, I made a poll on who is stronger currently in the story, the first commander of the Beast Pirates and Kaido's right-hand man, King the Wildfire, or the Revolutionary Army's second in command and sworn brother to our main character, Monkey D. Luffy, Sabo. And not gonna lie, I am genuinely shocked that this poll was this close, because if we are being genuinely honest and look at each character's stats and feats from a non-biased angle, there is very little evidence to support Sabo winning this matchup. I'm sure that might be a hard pill to swallow for some die-hard Sabo fans, but I'm not even trying to be mean. Until further notice, King takes the W quite handily, and we'll go over the canon material in detail to highlight that. It's important to note as well that at the time of recording, we are currently at chapter 1158 of the manga, and we'll be using all canon information we have available to discuss this match. So I highly encourage you to sit down and actually listen to the explanation as we go over piece by piece why Sabo versus King is not close. Just like in my Kid versus Katakuri video, instead of doing a simple one-to-one comparison of stats between the characters, I think for this video I'd simply rather highlight how Sabo's feats just don't cut it anymore in the grand hierarchy of One Piece. Wano and everything after really raised the bar by a significant margin when it comes to scaling in the One Piece world, and with Sabo's current feats, it's hard to put him above someone like King. Whether purposely or not, many people misinterpret what Sabo has currently done in this story and put him at extremely high levels for disingenuous reasons. Feel free to skip to the battle breakdown section of the video if a lot of this just is common sense to you, but here I'm going to be as detailed as I can for reviewing Sabo's feats just to show I'm being very genuine with this matchup. In chapter 743 and 744 of One Piece, Sabo debuts his main fighting style using his Dragon Claw fist, destroying the Colosseum room with his Dragon Breath attack, and obtaining the Flame Fruit. First things first, let's cover our basis. Sabo is a Logia, and it seems like he has advanced armor haki. If Sabo is outwardly projecting his haki to perform the Dragon Breath, then this fits the description of advanced armament. I'm not trying to downplay Sabo here. There's no 100% in-universe confirmation, and his VV card says he only has observation and armament haki, not elaborating further on how unique it is. For the sake of discussion, I have no problem giving him the ability, I'm just throwing it out there. Moving on to chapter 750, where we get a lot of misinterpretation with Sabo's true strength when he begins to fight against Fujitora. A lot of people over-exaggerate this moment by saying that Sabo is 100% on the level of the admirals for simply engaging Fujitora one-on-one, but don't bother actually reading the fight and looking at the context. I touched on it in my video breaking down Fujitora's character, which I recommend checking out, but not a single instance in their fight was Fujitora going all out. Sabo himself makes note of this in chapter 757, where he literally calls out Fujitora for holding back and playing dumb while he's wheezing. Sabo is literally trying to figure out what Fujitora is plotting, which later gets revealed in 760 when Fujitora flat out tells Sabo his plans and purposely lets Sabo go. Sabo himself considers himself lucky that Fujitora spared him. Keep in mind as well that in the very next chapter, when the Marines hear about Sabo and Fujitora's fight ending in a supposed draw, Oda makes it clear to emphasize that Fujitora 100% has a personal agenda in Dressrosa and that he should have been able to handle Sabo. Sabo wheezing against a suppressed admiral, purposely sabotaging the Marines the entire time in Dressrosa, does not put him on the same level as the admirals. It's not a good argument for him. Stop over-exaggerating what actually happened. If clashing with a suppressed admiral was enough to make someone on their level, then Dressrosa Luffy would be considered a Fujitora rival too. Next on the list is chapter 786, 787, and 791, where Sabo fights and defeats Burgess. This is a genuine W for Sabo. Nothing inherently wrong with this moment, but it's important to note that Sabo was fighting against Burgess, who didn't have his Devil Fruit. We don't know how strong Burgess is now compared to when he fought Sabo, but he 100% has gotten stronger since. But that pretty much concludes Sabo's activities in Dressrosa, which leads to the main problem with the scaling. There is very little material to work with when it comes to Sabo's canon strength at the time of recording. In a Q&A last year, Oda confirmed that Sabo trains every day in order to master his fruit, which is genuinely good. However, people forget the timeline of events in the story because the reverie took place shortly after Dressrosa, essentially right after Whole Cake Island, which is roughly about a month or so in universe time for One Piece, so at best, Sabo has been training for just a month since Dressrosa. We then see Sabo, Dragon, and the revolutionary captains get ready for their mission to storm the reverie in chapter 904, and we see Sabo actually infiltrate into the event literally the next chapter in chapter 905. In chapter 908, the reverie officially begins, and we see Sabo and the captains begin to execute their mission. After this, we don't get any information about what went down at the reverie all the way till 1054, where Sabo is first called the Flame Emperor by Big News Morgans. It is alleged that he fought against Fujitora and Green Bull along with the other revolutionary captains. But we know the true events of the reverie now after Sabo himself retells everything directly to Dragon and Ivankov. Again, Everything that takes place between chapters 1083 and 1086 is Sabo's point of view. We know for a fact that Sabo never fought the admirals and that the admirals were holding back again. You can't even use this to upscale Sabo compared to the captains when it's revealed that Fujitora was caught literally assisting the revolutionaries and the wounds he received during the reverie were from a pissed off Green Bull while he was playing defense and protecting slaves. While the captains were engaged with the admirals and freeing the slaves, Sabo was trying to go free Kuma, but he met up with Bonnie instead. Then they split up after the guards talked about the throne room, and that's when Sabo confronted the Gurosei in 1085. People use this to try and hype up Sabo, but he literally didn't do anything. His fire got eaten by Imu, and the Gurosei just regenerated from any damage he may have caused them. He then got his back blown out by Imu, and King Cobra made his final stand as Sabo's meat shield so he can get away. I don't know why Sabo fans never want to bring up Cobra, but that is literally the reality of the situation. An old crippled man needed to sacrifice himself so Sabo could escape. That is the wholehearted truth written in the story. Saying it one more time, Sabo himself is the one who retold the story. And finally, addressing the big splash panel from 1121, this panel has been used to drastically bolster Sabo's stats but blatantly ignore the context of the panel. Vegapuk's whole speech and Oda's intentions is about how these 12 characters will play a significant role in regards to finding the One Piece. That's it. If this was really about strength, do you think Kobe or Buggy would have been included? Yes, you can 100% say that in the future, Sabo is going to get stronger and might possibly be one of the strongest characters EOS, depending on how Oda writes the final saga and the battles that take place in the final arc. But EOS Sabo does not equal current Sabo. You can't use a hypothetical imaginary version of a character that hasn't been written yet in order to say he's this strong right now. That's some caveman logic and goalpost moving to avoid the fact that in the grand hierarchy of One Piece, currently Sabo's feats are kind of lackluster. It doesn't mean he'll stay that way, but this is all the info we have pertaining to his strength. Now let's move on to breaking down the battle. So when it comes to breaking down the battle, we have to address one main thing. Can Sabo actually put down King before he eventually tires out after dealing with King's naturally high durability? Because you see, it doesn't really matter that Sabo can augment his Dragon Claw fist with his Flame Fruit when King is a natural born Lunarian, a race that is literally stated to burst into flames. As I said earlier in the Sabo's breakdown section, yes, it is confirmed that Sabo trains every day to get stronger at controlling his fire powers, but given the timeline of the story between him obtaining the fruit in Dressrosa compared to the events that took place during the Reverie, he's only had his fruit for about 1 to 2 months within the story's timeline. In the Ace novel, it took Ace 3 years for him to master his fruit, but even if you don't accept that as canon, we can use an in-universe example as well with Kaku, who needed 2 whole years to awaken his Devil Fruit after obtaining it. So I'm not saying Sabo isn't gaining strength, but there's absolutely no way he has the same proficiency with his fruit compared to Ace, who did have his powers for years. Sabo blasting any fire at King is going to be nigh useless, so it really does come down to his Haki and his stamina. You can definitely make an argument for Sabo having advanced armor Haki just from the functionality of his Dragon Breath technique being similar to the description of it when Luffy is training in Udon, but his feats really don't give us much to work with. Yeah, he destroyed a Coliseum ring in Dressrosa, but come on man, we aren't in 2014 anymore. This isn't a spectacular showcase. In the battle against suppressed Fujitora, he never injured him at all while he was the one wheezing mid-battle. Keep in mind, no one was able to challenge Sabo up to this point. He was just slaughtering fodder the entire time with 0 difficulty before fighting Fujitora. So it's tough to even figure out the AP in his attacks, but we can say for certain that as of right now, he does not have the top tier strength of the Admirals in the Yonko. The Flame Emperor title means nothing. It was made up from Morgan's exaggerating the events of the Reverie. Sabo doesn't even acknowledge it. Morgan's called Luffy the 5th Emperor after Whole Cake Island. We know for a fact that didn't mean anything when Luffy was actually challenged by a top tier. Without lying or trying to over-exaggerate Sabo's actual feats, he really doesn't have a surefire way of putting down King with his flames on or off. King was able to endure multiple attacks from Marco and Zoro with virtually no rest. In terms of his one-on-one showings, we have to remember that the battle between him and Zoro was completely one-sided in his favor until Zoro unlocked his King of Hell mode and discovered the secret behind King's flames. When it comes to endurance, Zoro has one of the most impressive showcasings of any character in the entire story without question. But King was beating his ass so badly, Zoro was beginning to doubt if he could even win. Considering how important Zoro's vow is of never losing again, that is an insane feat for King and really highlights how tough he is when it comes to his durability. I don't even think it's a bad take to say that Zoro would have likely lost if he didn't unlock King of Hell mode. Keep in mind as well that Zoro with no advanced Conqueror's Haki was able to injure Kaido. Obviously Kaido wasn't going all out yet, but it is impressive that Zoro's attacks were that effective that his dragon and hybrid forms took damage, and yet King was able to shrug off those same attacks with no damage. If we're being realistic, I think it's fair to say that it's possible for Sabo to discover King's secret, but he's not going to be able to notice instantly. Zoro may be an idiot when it comes to anything outside of being a swordsman, but he does have good battle IQ. It took him a long time of getting his butt whooped and almost dying to finally figure out King's secret. No canon material has shown me that Sabo has equal or greater endurance than Zoro at the time of recording. But for the sake of the argument, let's say Sabo does survive long enough to discover King's secret. What exactly are his attacks supposed to do? King, with his durability lowered in his flames off mode, was able to endure direct attacks from King of Hell Zoro and clash with him multiple times. Sabo fans, I dare you, I fucking dare you to say that Sabo's advanced armor haki is stronger than King of Hell Zoro's advanced Conqueror's haki. If you actually believe that nonsense, every Zoro fan has the legal right to rip you in half. Let's be so serious. Sabo, if he holds out long enough, is not going to be able to deliver enough solid damage before he gasses out and eventually falls. King is honestly a natural predator for Sabo when discussing this matchup because his natural biology makes Sabo's fire powers useless, and he can endure and clash against attacks with significantly higher AP than what Sabo has currently displayed in the story. I don't even like King like that. I genuinely do not care for his character outside of his connection to the Lunarians, but these are the facts. Sabo couldn't injure a suppressed Fujitora who was literally throwing the fight and sabotaging the Marines. Sabo hasn't fought one-on-one against anyone else that will be seen as a strong fighter. His only W's consist of beating up a bunch of fodder and Burgess without his Devil Fruit. He never fought directly against Green Bull or Fujitora at the Reverie. It's flat out saying that if the Admirals weren't at Mary Joa, they would have crushed the Revolutionary Captains, so you can't even upscale Sabo by using their performance as a base. That title of being the Flame Emperor doesn't give him a stat boost, and Sabo didn't do anything against Imu or the Gurusei. The guy literally has nothing. Without a shadow of a doubt, Sabo will play a big role as we continue into the final saga, and will get stronger and eventually have really good and legitimate showings that don't need to be exaggerated. Most likely against the Holy Knights, seeing as they are targeting Sabo after what went down at the Reverie, but as of now, in terms of active right hands in the story, Sabo is not on the higher end of the spectrum with characters like King or Marco or Zoro or Ben Beckman. So in my opinion, King wins this match mid-diff until further notice. If you disagree, that's 100% fine, and you can let me know in the comments, but I promise you I'm not going to take you seriously if you try to use portrayal as your defense. His actual portrayal that isn't covered in lies by Morgans isn't even good. All he has going for him right now is a guaranteed long-term investment, but nothing that helps him currently in the story. I hope you all have a great day, and please stay safe. Peace.